So Tom found Puss a leather bag, a shiny pair of boots, and a shiny pair of boots. He gave him a cloak and a floppy hat too. The cat filled the bag with carrots and strutted off into the fields. Chapter 2, Puss Goes to Work. Puss headed for a field where he knew there were lots of rabbits. Opening the bag, he stretched out on the ground and pretended to be dead. Just as he expected, a foolish young rabbit came bouncing along and sniffed the carrots. As it poked its quivering nose into the bag, Puss bounced. "Got you!" Puss was delighted with his catch. He marched straight to the palace and asked to see the king. In front of the throne, Puss bowed low. "Your Royal Highness, I have brought you a gift from my master, the Duke of Carabas." "How amazing, a talking cat!" "How kind, thank your master very much," replied the king. The next day, Puss went into the fields again. This time he hid among some golden corn. He held his bag wide open, and 2 partridges flew straight in. Puss chuckled as he pulled the drawstring tight. Once more, Puss took his catch to the king. "Take these for your master." Puss became a regular visitor to the palace. Soon, the king began to wonder who the generous duke was. Princess Arabella. One day, Puss and Tom were walking by the river. Puss knew the king would be driving by with his beautiful daughter, Princess Arabella, and he had a plan. When Puss spotted the royal coach in the distance, he turned to Tom. "Quick, take off your clothes and jump in the river," he told him. "It's freezing." Tom was puzzled, but he trusted Puss, so he jumped in. A minute later, Tom was even more puzzled. First, Puss hid all his clothes under a large stone. Then he started to scream, "Help! Help! Please rescue my master, the Duke of Carabas." As the royal coach came by, the king recognized Puss. "Guards, pull the Duke out of the water at once," he ordered. "Dreadful thieves attacked my master and stole his clothes," Puss explained. "That's terrible," said the king, "but I think I can help." He snapped his fingers and a servant ran up. "Go to the palace and fetch some clothes for the Duke." All this time, Princess Arabella had been watching from the coach. When she saw Tom in his fine new clothes, she jumped from her seat. He was so handsome. "Duke of Carabas, this is my daughter, Princess Arabella. Does he mean me?" Tom bent and kissed Princess Arabella on the hand. "Oh," she gasped and smiled. The king insisted that Puss and the Duke join them on their drive. "You go, master," said Puss, pushing Tom forward. "I have some errands to run." Chapter 4, 40 Fields. As the coach rumbled along, Puss raced ahead. He still had lots to do. Before long, he came to some men mowing a field. Puss clapped his hands. Listen to me, he shouted. When the king drives by, tell him this field belongs to the Duke of Carabas, or my master will chop you into mincemeat. A talking cat. His master must be a magician. The men didn't dare refuse. Sure enough, when the king arrived, he asked them who owned the field. The Duke of Carabas, Your Highness. The men had been so frightened by Puss' threats, they all spoke together. Tom was astonished to hear them tell the king this was his land, but he decided to play along. This field always produces a good harvest. Puss ran ahead. In the next field he passed, some men were reaping grain. Tell the king this field belongs to the Duke of Carabas, he snarled, or my master will grind you into mincemeat. Horrified, the men agreed. When the royal coach arrived at the next field, the king got out. This field was twice as big as the one before. Who owns this field? He asked some workers. The Duke of Carabas, Your Highness, they replied. Puss made the same threat to everyone he met. The king was astonished at how much land the Duke owned. Chapter 5, Castle Ogre. Finally, Puss reached a magnificent castle. It was owned by a fierce ogre, but that didn't stop Puss. This ogre happened to be one of the richest ogres in the country. All the land they had passed on the way was actually his. The ogre greeted Puss, licking his lips, and invited the cat inside. Puss smiled. He was about to try his biggest trick. I've heard, he said to the ogre, that you can change yourself into any creature you want. Could you really turn into an elephant or a lion? See for yourself. It was true. In seconds, the ogre turned into a huge lion. Puss was terrified. After growling and roaring for a while, the ogre changed back to himself. That was the most frightening thing I've ever seen, cried Puss. But I've also been told, he went on, that you can change into a really small animal, such as a rat or a mouse. Of course, said the ogre rather boastfully. Isn't that impossible? Just watch. And he did. But as soon as Puss saw the tiny mouse scampering around, he leapt on him and gobbled him up. Chapter 6, A Royal Wedding. By this time, the royal coach had reached the ogre's castle. Let's visit, said the king, who wanted to see who owned such a grand home. Puss heard the coach clattering over the drawbridge and flung open the castle doors. Your Majesty, welcome to the castle of my master, the Duke of Carabas. You mean you own this splendid castle as well as all that land? The king asked Tom in amazement. Trying to hide his surprise, Tom nodded. The king was impressed with the duke's wonderful castle, and Princess Arabella thought he was kind to let them share his feast. As the king ate, he noticed that the duke and his daughter were getting along very well indeed. He realized that the duke would make a perfect prince. By the end of the meal, the king could not keep his thoughts to himself. "Duke of Carabas," he declared, "will you marry my daughter?" "I would be delighted, sir." A wedding was arranged for the very next day, and so the miller's youngest son became a prince and lived happily in the castle with his beautiful bride. Tom's brothers were both made earls. As for Puss, he became a lord and never had to chase mice again, except for fun. Puss in Boots is a very well-known fairy tale that has been passed from generation to generation by word of mouth. The French writer Charles Perrault first wrote it down in 1697. It was one of 8 fairy tales he wrote in a book called Tales of Mother Goose. The other stories included Sleeping Beauty, Little Red Riding Hood, Babes in the Wood, Cinderella, and Tom Thumb. Thank you for watching.